All right, and we've started. Good morning, everyone. This is week 1, day 2 of Programming Basics. Welcome, everyone. We are going to go over, let me share my screen. We are going to go over order of operations, and we're going to start our intro into arrays today. Now, yesterday we went over variables, data types, and we went over the Algo app. Now, the lecture for that recording is, as you can see, if you hover over it, you can watch the video for that recording there. It's on YouTube, or you can go to this section here that says lecture recordings, the top left, and there's the playlist for us to see. Okay. So before I dive into today's lesson, there's a couple things I want to mention about how we're taking attendance, and also I need to cover some basics using Visual Studio Code that I didn't do yesterday. So we'll add that to today's lecture. So how we take attendance. We're going to take attendance 3 times a day, each day. The first attendance check is at 9, this lecture hour. The next one is at 10. All we're doing is seeing that you're in one of the breakout rooms working on your assignments. That's your second attendance check. And then your third one is at 2. So you really just need to be here in this Zoom room for those hours exactly. Now, the rest of the hours you can use on your own. Obviously, we assume that you're working on assignments. We encourage you to stay in this room for the whole entire day, from 9 to the end of the day, as long as you want to be here. The Zoom room will stay open as long as someone is in the room, okay? What I'm letting you guys know is that you have to make the 3 attendance checks each day. One is the 9, the next one is the 10, all right? You're just working on assignments there. We're just checking that you're there, and then another one at 2. What you do outside those hour blocks, you can work out yourself from your own schedule, but we encourage you to be here in Zoom and working with your cohort mates, asking us questions, but that's how the attendance works. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about was Visual Studio Code. So let me go to let me open up Visual Studio Code, and then we'll dive into the lecture, which is the topic order of operations and the intro to arrays. Let me just cover some basics on Visual Studio Code, because I realized there may be some things here that may be difficult that I didn't fully explain yesterday. All right, so here I have Visual Studio Code. This is what mine looks like when I first pull it up. And if I click that button at the top left there, the one that looks like there's 2 pages, this is my folder explorer. I can now explore folders the same that I would using my Finder on my Mac, or on the PC, it's called the File Explorer. Yeah, it's called File Explorer. So this is my File Explorer on the left-hand side. I can open and close this panel by clicking that button at the top left. And I can open a folder by clicking this button. And now if I don't have the folder already created, I can create it from here as well. So what I want to do is go to that Coding Dojo, for example's sake, we're going to go to Coding Dojo assignments and then Programming Basics. We're going to go inside this folder here. Oh, no, not Algo App 1. We're going to create a new folder here just to show how you could do this, right? So now I'm in Programming Basics. Whenever I work on an assignment, I want to work at the base folder level for that assignment, not the parent folder level, the one that I don't want to open it from Programming Basics here. I don't want to open from here. I want to create a folder for the assignment that I'm currently working on and open it from that level. So I'll say new folder, and I will title a folder. So I'll just call it example, because that's what I'm just showing you guys an example here. So now that I've created it, it's gone inside and I can open it from here. I know that I'm in the example folder because it says that at the top here. If I click open, there's nothing in the folder because I've just created it. So if I open it from here, now you can see here, let's try to draw on the screen. Yeah, see now you can see here. Come on, pen, you don't want to work with me? No, doesn't want to work. Okay, it's being stubborn. See here, it says example. All right, so this here is where my current folder that I'm in. This is showing me this is the current folder that you're in here. Now I can go inside this folder and create files inside here. Okay, so the way to do that is by going to hovering your mouse over to this area. And when you get close to the name of the folder here, you'll see some icons pop up. So when I hover close, some icons will pop up. The icon on this one here, that when I hover over, it's just a page with that plus sign there next to the folder with the plus sign. The page with the plus sign is to create a new file. The folder with the plus sign is to create a new folder. Now this button here, this is to refresh. So for example, if I update the folders or files from some other location and I want to see them updated here, I need to click this. I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. But before I do that, I want to just create a folder and file. So here I am in the example folder. What I can do is click this folder icon and I'll name a folder from here. So what should I give it as a name? I'll just call it test123. How about that? Random folder name test123. Okay, so now I've created a folder within my example folder. Do you see that there? This folder here says test123. It's in the example folder. I've created that by clicking this folder icon. I can create a folder. Well, now I'll create a file before I keep creating folders. Let's create a file. I'm going to create a file inside this test123 folder. The way I do that is by clicking the folder and then clicking this icon here, new file. So if I click it, now I can name a file. So I'll call this one example.js. Okay, just a random JavaScript file. The way I have named it, the way it knows it's a JavaScript file is by saying that .js at the very end, right? By typing .js at the end of a name of a file. So this is the name that you want to give the file, example. Now I want to make it a JavaScript file, .js. And the reason I want to do this is because all the code that we've been writing and learning so far, the variables and the data types, all of that is done in JavaScript. So we need that type of file name, .js, to write JavaScript. We can't write JavaScript in a non-JavaScript file. We have to write it in this type of file. Okay? So that's how we create files in folders within Visual Studio Code. All right, so before I continue, I want to now launch this poll. How well are we understanding what I was doing there? How to create folders and files within Visual Studio Code without using the computer's File Explorer or Finder. Okay, all following along? Awesome. All right, 10 out of 10. Cool. Okay, so that's how you create folders and files in Visual Studio Code. That's how I want to see you guys working on your assignment. So if I, for example, see that you have opened your folder from, let's say, instead of, you go to desktop and you open it from Dojo assignments, you just click Visual Studio and you open it from here. Yes, you'll see all your folders and all your assignments. But what I want you guys to do is to get into the habit of, I'm not going to open it from the parent folder level, the greatest folder level. I'm going to open it only at the folder level of the assignment that I'm working on. So If the assignment is Algo App Level 1, pretend this is not just a screenshot, then I want to open it at this folder level. I want to see Algo App Level 1 at the very top. Or if I'm working on some example project, whatever this would be, I would be opening it and seeing example at the very top where I see Dojo assignments. So I don't want to see you guys opening your programming, Dojo assignments or programming basics from Visual Studio. Open it from the exact project folder level that you're working on. Okay, is that making sense, everyone? Just nod. Okay, cool. All right, awesome. All right, that's what I wanted to cover about Visual Studio. Oh, one more thing before we change topic. There's also extensions, okay? If you, well, I guess I can cover this one. This is not so important yet. This is the search. So this one you can search at any folder level. So for example, let's say in this example.js, I say console.log hello world. Okay, I just wanted to write this in my code because when I click this here, this search is going to search all the folders and files for whatever I give it. So for example, if I wanted to let's move out of this so that we're not so confused by just seeing it there. So now I don't have any files that I'm editing right now. I just have all my folders. I want to use the search bar, and I'm going to search for what I typed in one file, a specific phrase in one file, that hello world, right? Not even console log hello world, just the part that says hello world. And it'll show me, oh, you have something like that in this file here. Is this what you're looking for? So I can click it from here and see what it is. Now, this tool is going to be a lot more helpful when you have a bunch of folders and files and you don't know where you put something in one of your projects, but that's going to be something you do later on in further stacks. For now, we're not going to have a lot of use for this search bar because we'll be working with about only 3 files at a time in the future, next week. Okay, this icon here, don't worry about what that is. We'll deal with that on Friday. This one here, don't touch that either. Don't even worry about what that is. This one here, this one is extensions. Now, the platform itself tells you to download certain extensions. So if you go to the setup your computer part and you go optional Visual Studio Code extensions, it'll tell you a couple extensions that it'll recommend. So for example, where is the first one? Rainbow here. So if we see this one here, Rainbow, I can go type in Rainbow and it'll show me an extension that we would recommend. So this one is okay to download. All right, what extensions are, if I haven't made that clear yet, extensions are like add-ons. They are additions, like modifications you can make to your Visual Studio Code program that will help you code. They will either highlight something or give you some sort of like syntax error, or it'll have some additional feature that doesn't come inbuilt into Visual Studio that some other developer has created for others to install and say, hey, this has helped me. I think it will help you as a developer. Here's some add-on tools. So you see I have a couple. What I'm going to do is recommend that you guys download as little extensions as possible. And I'm going to start uninstalling all these as well. The reason is, if you have too many extensions installed, if you just go happy-go-lucky installing extensions, what will happen is they will start to conflict with each other. Something in the software code that the developers wrote for one extension may not agree with the code for another extension. They may have conflicting rules, and then they start to behave really weird. They're not doing their intended purpose. They start to make Visual Studio Code worse. It'll start to give some bugs that you won't be able to Google and find out what's going on. It's because it's your specific combination of extensions that are conflicting with each other. So be careful when installing extensions, because you'll get those errors. I would just recommend just like minimal extensions, and even the good ones, sometimes they deprecate, which means they're no longer updating, or their version doesn't it's not compatible with Visual Studio, or it needs some sort of update, or it's somehow obsolete. So deprecation, that can be a reason for a good extension no longer working. So just be careful with your extensions is what I'm trying to say. Okay, minimal, as little as possible. If you want to download one, you can try Rainbow. What it does is just highlights here, like with different colors, what level of indentation your code is. You can work just fine without it, but here's one that we could get you started with. Now, I have a whole bunch of other ones. I don't explain what they are. Like I said, I'm going to start uninstalling all of mine. This is probably a really bad example, but I'm just telling you guys now ahead of time. Okay, so I'm going to uninstall these on my own time later. But don't do what I did there. Don't install a whole bunch. I have to figure out which ones are absolutely necessary that I've picked up over the years. So FYI. Okay, now with that being said, let's start the lesson. So we have today order of operations and intro to arrays. All right, the first one we should be somewhat familiar with already, probably from grade school. If not, that's all right. We'll learn that now. It's not a very hard topic. Order of operations. Okay. Order of operations. The next thing we're going to go into is another data type, like what we were talking about yesterday, except for this one's a little different. This one's called an array. We'll get into that a little later on in the lecture. So let's go into the platform and talk about order of operations. Okay. So we know that we can do math with JavaScript, right? We can assign variables to have number values, and we can use those values to perform operations. Now, the question becomes, whenever we're doing math operations, which math operation is more important than the other ones, right? Because, for example, if we see this here, 3 plus 5, we know that 3 plus 5 is 8, right? And we also know that 5 plus 3 is 8. It doesn't matter which order you put 3 or 5 first. 3 plus 5 is 8, and 5 plus 3 is 8. Now, it gets a little bit more tricky when we do subtraction, right? The order of the numbers that we put in when we do subtraction is not going to be the same as what we see that when we do addition, right? Because when we see here, 3 minus 5, that's going to be -2, and 5 minus 3, that's going to be 2. So in this case, it does matter the order that we put the numbers, right? Because this is our starting point, 3 is our starting point, and we're subtracting from 3, 5. And so we count down 2, 1, 0, -1, -2. That's 5 numbers down. And so we get -2, right? Pretty easy subtraction. We all know this. We all had, we all subtracted from our bank account one day and went over the balance, and we got a negative. That's how we learned that. And so we have here 5 minus 3 equals 2. Pretty easy subtraction there. Okay, so that's, so far, the order of operations it means the order of the numbers in math operators matter. Okay, so especially in subtraction so far. Now let's look at addition and multiplication together. Let me make this even bigger. Okay, so here we have 3 plus 1 times 5. All right, so we have 3 plus 1 times 5 equals 8. And why is that? We need to go over something we learned in school, but let's take a trip to memory lane and talk about that famous word. I'm going to try to use the pen again. For some reason today, the pen isn't working. Maybe I have to write on the, I think I have to write on the bottom part of the screen or something. We'll see what it's requiring. Oh, no. That's totally scary. I'm not going to deal with that. I just touched the screen and a little, and everything was, that didn't look good. Okay. I'll figure out what's wrong with that later. We can work without it. So I have another annotation tool. I'll use that. So we're going to write it out. And see if I can make this bigger. I know you guys don't see what I'm writing yet, but I'm going to try to make this work. All right, so we have the word PEMDAS here. I'm writing it in red. Let's see if I can do this with Zoom tools. No, I can't do it with Zoom tools. If I do it with my mouse. I'm kind of good with this. I didn't know I had such good handwriting with my mouse. Okay, PEMDAS. All right, what does PEMDAS stand for? Can anyone tell me?
It's parentheses, exponents.
Yeah,
sure.
All right.
Multiplication, division, addition, subtraction.
Yes. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. But that's kind of hard to remember just in that order like that. So anyone remember the acronym?
Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally.
There we go. Please. Wow, I am much better than I thought at writing with the mouse. Excuse my oh, that D is too fancy. Dear Aunt. And just like elementary school, I'm going to have to write my last word at the bottom here, Sally. Okay. So what does the P stand for? It stands for parentheses, right? So anything in the parentheses, we deal with first. Anything that we see in the parentheses, we deal with first. And then the excuse, P is for parentheses. The E in excuse is for exponents. And I'm going to try my best to spell this right off memory. Exponents, that means after we've dealt with everything in the parentheses, then we move on to the exponents in the math operation that we see. Exponents. Oh, this font's getting weird. Exponents. Okay. Exponents. Oh, that's a weird S. Okay, and the my, what does my stand for? The M in my.
Multiplication.
Yes. How about I just put a multiplication sign? There we go. Multiplication. Dear. Dear is for division. So I'll write that division sign. Dear Aunt Sally. A is for addition. S is for subtraction. So we have the minus sign. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, subtraction. And is that clear to everyone how I wrote it with my mouse? Okay, cool. All right, never done that one before, but you got to adapt. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. This is the order of operations. So whenever we write something, a math operation JavaScript code, the interpreter is going to do the math operation in the same way that we have been doing math operations since school. We've been using PEMDAS, and so we're still going to use PEMDAS when we are doing math operations in JavaScript. Okay, so that's all that this lesson is basically going to cover, that we are doing the same old order of operations we've always done. All right, so now we are here. Let's do some math operations just to get our practice, make sure we're all in math shape. Okay, so we have 3 plus 1 times 5 equals 8. So what did we say was more important here? Multiplication, right? So 1 times 5 is what we're going to do first. 1 times 5 is 5 plus 3, then we get 8. All right, so the next one we have in the parentheses, we see the parentheses is the first one that we would have to deal with, right? Because PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, the P is for parentheses. So we deal with this parentheses operation first. 3 plus 1 is 4. So we have that there, the number 4. And so 4 times 5 is 20, right? 4 times 5 is 20. But we wouldn't have done the reverse order. We would have to have dealt with whatever's in the parentheses first, get that sum, and then add that or multiply that by 5. You get your answer. Okay, simple stuff so far, right? Now, let's do a couple more just to get our practice in. Console log 2 times 2 plus 1. All right, in this operation here, we know that we have to do multiplication first because in our PEMDAS acronym, PEM, M is for multiplication, and it comes before A, the A in OS, the PEMDAS addition. So we do multiplication first. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 1, and we get the output of 5. And here we have the same one, except for now, the 2 and 1 on the right-hand side are in parentheses. So parentheses, we know, are going to be our first one that we deal with. So 2 plus 1 is 3. So we have that 3, that mental note. This parentheses is the value is 3. So 3 times 2, 2 times 3 is 6. So we get that value 6. Okay. Now let's move on. But before I do that, let's take a poll check. How are we feeling about PEMDAS? Everything's good with PEMDAS? All right. PEMDAS is good. Next, we have JavaScript inbuilt functions. Do you remember yesterday I kind of got ahead of myself when I was trying to help you guys try to figure out whether when you add a string and a number together, what it was it a string or a number, what you got? And I started to talk about JavaScript inbuilt functions. Well, now today we are going to deal with them. We are going to deal with them. And this is our first encounter with them now. We are going to learn how to use the inbuilt math JavaScript functions. So we're going to take a look at how these work, and then we're going to run these on Trace to see exactly how this works. Okay, but let's look here at some documentation. So now I'm going to go to MDN docs, JavaScript, and math. And so when I do this search, I see in my Google search this one here. This here is a list of all the inbuilt JavaScript functions. All right, all of these are inbuilt JavaScript functions, and you can learn about each one by clicking on it. Let's see what math.cost does. This helps us find a math operation using, I don't want to get into this one, it's too complex. Let's look at one that we're actually going to learn today. Okay, so the ones that we're going to learn today, the first one is math.pow. So let's look at math.pow. So if we go here, math.pow, the math.pow static method returns a value of the base raised to its power. So what this means is this is just going to take, it's going to take in two integers here. So you say math.pow, this is accessing the JavaScript math library. So this is specific to the math library of JavaScript because there's more than just math inbuilt functions. Look at all these. This is just the math section. We can move on to standard built-in objects. And there's a whole bunch that are in addition to math. But we're not going to get into that. We're just looking at the math library that JavaScript has. All right. And this one, math.pow, what it does is it takes the first number there, 7, and it raises it to the power of the number to the right of it. So 7 times 7 times 7. And that's how we get math.pow. So let's see it in action. All right, so can someone explain to me how exponents work? Can you give me a brief summation of like a little bit of what exponents do? Like if I have 5 to the power of 2, what does that mean?
It just multiplies 5 by itself twice.
Yes, you are multiplying the number by itself by the number of times you see here. So we are saying 5 times 5. And we are only multiplying it by itself twice. And that's what will give us the output of 25. Right? So let's just see this in action. What I'm going to do here is introduce, in addition to trace. No, it's not going to go there. Once I click it. Okay. In addition to trace, yesterday we learned about trace. Today I want to show you another one, an alternative called Python Tutor. And I've added it to the helpful links. Here, as long as we see here JavaScript ES6, that's the current version of JavaScript, we can paste in our code here, and then we can visualize the execution of the code. So I'm going to click Visualize Execution. And this will do what Trace does. It'll go step by step, but it's not as fancy. So you can just click through it like this. And it'll just, there's only one line of code, so I only need to step through it once. And then it'll console log the output right here. More advertisements on this page. It's not as fancy, but it's more straight to the point. Okay, so there's Python Tutor. I've added it to the helpful links, so you can use that in addition to Trace. This is just an alternative. And let's play with math.pow. So what is, let's go back. What would we expect to see if we said 5 to the power of 3? That's 5 times 5 times 5.
125.
Oh, do we have a math wizard here? Or did you use a calculator? Because all right, let's see it. All right, it's 5 times 5 times 5 because we said 5 multiply against yourself 3 times, and it's 125. Awesome. That's how math.pow works. So math.pow is going to work by calling first the math library. All right, so that's done. And now what part of the math library do we want to access? We want to access the part that says we want to run something to the power of that number. So we say math.pow. Now we're accessing the .pow part of the math library. And, oh, I have extra parentheses here. And then we have, after each call to an inbuilt math function, we have a parentheses. And in the parentheses, the first value is the value that we're going to raise to the power of the number to the right of it. This will still run. This will still run. The code will be executed, but now we don't see it in our console, right? And that's because we didn't console log this. I took away the console log just to show you. This will still execute. This will still do something, but we don't get to see this printed anywhere unless we directly tell it to print. We needed to tell it, you need to print to this area in order to see this result actually in action, right? So, for example, it's like when console log is like when you go grocery shopping and the cashier asks you if you want a receipt. Console log is that, okay, printed receipt. I need to see this. And without console log, then the transaction still goes through, but you're not going to see the representation of it. You're not going to see the print. So we need that console log to see how math.pow would print something to the console. Okay, so that's how we use inbuilt math function. Let's look at some more. We have math.pow, and we also have the double multiplication sign. This works the same as math.pow. So let's check that out. All right, let's copy this, and I'm going to paste it in. Actually, I'm going to go back to trace. I just wanted to introduce the alternative. Trace is a little bit trickier, right? Because we have to run our code within the opening and closing brackets. We can't delete that. And I don't want you guys to copy and paste this into your homework or assignments, but we do have to paste whatever we do inside here. And we want to see now a print of 6 multiplication sign twice times 2. So this is going to be another exponent. How do we say it? Exponent operation, exponential operation. There we go. Okay, and then a lifetime later, we have our answer, 36. Yeah, that's why I wanted to introduce the Python tutor, because sometimes this thing is just, it takes too long to run something's too simple, right? This is for seeing huge block of code run step by step. I think this one's better for smaller bits of code. Okay, so we have console log 6 multiple, and here's our console at the very bottom, this 36 in yellow, not very visible, right? But it's there. So 6 multiplication sign twice 2, that 6 times 6 is 36. So that's what we're seeing here. 6 times 6. Wait, hold on. 6 times 6, 36? Yeah, that's what the computer is telling me, right? So, okay. Yeah, I just had a moment of doubt. All right. Now, we're going to take a little quiz, see how good are we at math, and then we'll move on to the next topic. Let's take a quiz together. You can answer in the chat. And then, oh no, that's not right. I had reset it. Why are you doing this to me? Here we are. Okay. What number will print? What? It just wants to reset every time? No, that's not right. Okay, you guys take the quiz on your own. I'm sorry. Every time I refresh this thing, it doesn't want to let me retake the quiz with you guys. Oh, here we go. I got it working. What number will print? Ugh, no way. There we no, can't do it. Never had that issue, but let's move on to commenting. I believe you guys can do math on your own, take the quiz on your own. We don't have to take a group quiz. So let's shrug that off. All right. Let's move to commenting. Commenting is important. We need to know what it is and how it works. Really simple. Let's look at our code in Visual Studio. We have our example.js. If I want to comment this line, what I could do is just highlight. I can click the 1. I can highlight it manually, or I can click the 1. The number will highlight the whole row. And if you're on a PC, you will hold Control. If you're on a Mac, you'll hold Command. So I'm holding Command, and I also hit // and that will comment out the whole entire line. What does that mean? That means that this line here, line 1, is only going to be visible to us developers. When we comment out some code, that means that the interpreter it'll be invisible to the interpreter. The interpreter will not see it. So let's show what I mean by running some stuff here on trace. So I'm going to say, let's say var x equals 5. And I also want to console log it, console.log x. And let's say var y equals 6. I'm going to console.log y. All right, but before I execute this, I'm going to just put a double slash in front of this one here. All right, so we see var x equals 5, console log x, var y equals 6, and then we're going to console log y. Let's just see what this runs like. It's really simple, right? All we're going to do is show the difference between this execution and how it would look like if I were to add a comment, right? So we have var x equals 5. We t-diagrammed on the right here, x 5, var y equals 6. Okay, we noted that, y 6. And each time it was console log. So line 7 said console log x, we console logged x on 5, and then 11, we also console logged y on 6. All I want to show now is what would happen if I put a double slash in front of this console log y. So what should we now expect to see? Any guesses? Let's see.
You cut it out.
Okay. And I didn't do anything to this here, var x equals 5. So we see that on our t-diagram, and it's also printed at the very bottom. There's our 5. So we had that. We didn't do anything to this. So this is running normal. Var y equals 6. We're about to get that noted on our t-diagram. Okay, so we had it noted, and we went to the end of the code because that was the last line the code interpreter knew to run. That's because this line, when it's green and it has a double slash like that, it's green because it has a double slash. When it has that double slash, that means the interpreter will not see it. It will not be read. So it will skip over any line that has that double slash in front of it. That's only visible to us as the developer. Okay, and this is a way to, for example, let's say you wanted to keep this line of code in case you needed it for some reason, and you didn't want to delete it yet, right? So you want to just keep it there for visual sake. Or let's say you want to reuse it later. You want to test to see what it would work like without it, like I just did now. You can use that commenting for that as well. Okay, so let me take a quick poll to see how well we're understanding how a comment works, that when you put a double slash in front of a line of code, it will not run. All right, so let me try to explain a little bit more about this then. Comments. What comments do is cancel out code from being executed, and it makes it only visual for us, the developer, to see. There's multiple ways to write comments. You can do it manually, just like you saw me do, right? You can do a double slash. You can do it manually. You can highlight the whole entire line and do that shortcut command, Control / or Command / if you're on a Mac like me. All right. And there it is. This file exists. There's some code written in it, but if I were to run this file, this code would not be executed. We would not see hello world console. We would not see it logged to the console. Okay. You can also, for example, let's say I have this written multiple times on my page, and I want to comment a block of code. I want to comment, let's say, just the last three out. I want to comment out the last three. So what I can do is I can highlight the block that I want to be commented out, and I do that shortcut command / and now I highlighted I commented out everything that I had highlighted already. Okay, now I can highlight the block again, uncomment, and it's back to being read. Now be careful with using block comments, because if you don't comment and uncomment exactly, you can get mixed up. So let me show you what I mean by this. So I commented these last three. I used the block shortcut. And so now I want to uncomment, but in order to uncomment, let's say I highlighted these lines instead of the original block I commented out. If I do this now, you see this one is double commented and this one is commented. And so now it's a little bit messy, right? I can't just take all this code and uncomment it without this one still being commented. I know I'm saying comment a lot, but what I'm trying to show is whenever you use that block shortcut command, be sure that you undo it the way you started it, and not by overlapping your highlight block with a different pattern than you had initially started with. Okay, so that's how comments work, or block comments work. And comments are going to be different for each language that you're working with. So for now, we're working with JavaScript. So to comment something out on JavaScript, it's a double slash. And in HTML, for example, you may notice that there is a different way of adding a comment. There's also the multi-line comment. So instead of highlighting blocks of code at a time, you can also add the multi-line comment that you see there on the platform. So let's take a look at this. Let's use it. So it said the first part of the block comment. Let's just comment out the last three here. So the first part says add this / symbol, and then if you get the ending here, which is */ that will comment out a block of code as well. You see that? So this is also a block comment in JavaScript. Be careful when using this with the comment shortcut, because now if I comment within a comment, it's double commented. It's a little bit messy. So if I try to undo this now or comment this, it will just get messy. I'm just warning you guys not to comment over comments so much. Okay, so this is a block comment. And let's take another poll on comments before I move on. Cool, I think we're making more sense of this now. All right, so that is what a comment looks like. I wonder if we can take the comment quiz. Is it going to let me do it? Are all the quizzes broken on our page that I have to complain and tell somebody? All right, so I'm going to drag this. Here we are. Let's take this quiz. Oh, no, it did it again. If it did it again, I'm going to... Yeah, it did it again. All right, moving on. You guys can take the quiz on your own. I won't deplete these quizzes from you. So usually I like to take a group quiz in the class, but for some reason the platform is being buggy today, and anytime I try to reload the quiz, it won't let me do it. So take these knowledge checks on your own. It's important that you guys do this. They specially designed these to be in the places they are so that you get that that check that you're doing all right, that you're understanding. So knowledge check order of operations on your own, and knowledge check the commenting on your own. Okay, so you guys can do that after class. I'm going to move now on to arrays. This is the final topic of today's lecture. We said we were going to be going over order of operations and intro to arrays. So let's get into arrays now. And I'm a little bit bummed since I can't draw on the screen because I had this whole planned out that I would do this, but we'll figure out a way anyways. We'll use Visual Studio Code if we have to, just type it out. I like to draw it out though the first week. So let's try again. Let me try and see if I disconnect my tablet that I can draw on and I plug it in, maybe that will solve it. Okay, while this loads, let me go back to the platform. And we are on arrays. Okay, so yesterday we had dealt with 5 different data types. Who can tell me what they are? Type them in the chat or say it out loud.
Numbers.
Okay, Boolean's 1. There we go. Alonzo, I hear you, but I can't really hear you that well.
Oh, numbers. Undefined. No.
String, number, undefined, null, and then there was one more. Starts with the B.
Boolean.
Boolean, yep, you said it already. Okay, cool. All right, so those types of data, we have a name for those types of data. And if I can write on the screen, I'll be happy. Let me try writing here. Now this is, I'm gonna have to just work around this. Okay, so we're just gonna use text today. We won't draw. So var user's first name. This, what type of data type is this here? String, easy, right? Because on the right-hand side, we see the value is within quotations. So we know this data type is a string. And the one below it is also a string. And the one below this one is also a string. Doesn't matter what's inside the quotes, as long as it's within quotes, we know it's a string. What if you needed to put this information together into one thing, not having data separated out the way it is by variable? What if we wanted a variable to contain multiple bits of information? Well, that's what this a data type we're going to introduce to today is called an array. And this is what an array looks like here. This is what an array looks like. So you can see it starts with this opening bracket, the square bracket. And it closes with a square bracket. Do you see that there? Closes with a square bracket. Semicolon, those should be at the end of each line of JavaScript. Don't worry about, this doesn't add or subtract anything from anything. We're just looking at arrays, which is the opening bracket and closing bracket. That's what an array looks like. So everything inside here now is an array if it's within those brackets. Now within this array, we see we have multiple what? What is this?
Strings.
Strings. Right. Within this array, we have multiple strings. So we can see that this type of data that we're seeing here, let me expand my window. This type of data is a little bit more complex than this type of data, right? It has multiple values. And so all the data types that we dealt with yesterday, they have a name for them. They're called primitive, data types, primitive data types. Why primitive data types? Primitive is another word for simple. So it's a simple data type. It's a simple data type. A string is a string, a number is a number, a boolean is a boolean. A boolean is not a string, a boolean is not a number. Each type is unique to itself, right? A number is not going to be a string as long as it's not within quotations. It's going to be a number if it's an integer. So these are simple. They are either one type or another. But this one here, an array, as we can see here, this array has multiple strings. This array has multiple strings. Can an array only have strings? No. An array can have multiple different primitive data types within an array. So that makes an array a non-primitive data type, right? Very descriptive. Non-primitive data type. So an array is a non-primitive data type, which means it's not simple. And it's not simple in that it can contain multiple values, and those values can be varied between other primitive data types. So an array can contain strings and numbers and even booleans within the same array as other different types of primitive data types. All right, so let's see an example of this. So here we have our array, and below, let's see if we can find an example on this page. No, we don't have an example on this page, but we can totally write an array like this. Let me just copy this here, go to my text editor, so erase everything here, and there we go. I've pasted it into my code. I'm going to delete this email. I'll just put the number 6. Dwight Schrute 6. This is a totally legitimate array. It has the same amount of values. It has 3 values, but now the third value, I made it to be a number instead of a string. And an array can do that. An array can contain multiple values. So let's say, let's change this to 36, and that can stand for his age. But now we have his age saved somewhere. Here's another thing about arrays. Before we do that, let me just make sure we understood everything about arrays that I've mentioned so far before I introduce another thing about arrays. So how well do we understand that arrays are non-primitive data types that can contain multiple values of different types? Okay, looking good so far then. All right, so an array has multiple values. It can have multiple values. An array can have only one as well, right? So this is an array that has an integer. There's only one value in it. It's still an array though. It doesn't have to have more than one in order to be an array. It can have just one to be an array, but an array can have more than one value. If we wanted to access this value, this specific value, we said his age, 36. If we wanted to access this specific value, just 36, within this array, we have to know how an array orders its content. So the way an array is ordered is from left to right. Left to right, and we start counting not from 1, but from 0. So here we have, this is the first index in the array. The next one is number 1. So we start from 0, 1. And so what number would be 36? Easy, right? Someone say it. 2. Someone give me a sign. Got it. All right, 2. So the way that we access this 36 is by getting this index 2 of this user here. So how can we do that? Let's try and do that. So what we're going to do is say user. We say the name of the, let's console log it. So what we want to do is console.log user. And then in order to say at index 2, in order to get this value 36 from getting it from this index 2, we have to put in brackets after the name of the array. All right, so we're calling a specific part of this array. So we're saying, give me this from this user array. And we put brackets after this now, and we say at index 2. This is telling us that we want from this array the index 2 value. And the value is 36, so we're going to console log this. So let's copy and paste this into trace and see what we get now. All right, we don't need that console log y. All right, so we have our var user, we have an array, and we're trying to access this value and print it. So we said console log user, this array at index 2, 0, 1, 2. So that should be that. So let's run it. All right. I need some like Jeopardy music while this thing loads. So we have this running on the left here, and while that's running, see if we can write code on the right-hand side here. Okay. And I promise after this week, we won't use this tool anymore. This is just a tool that helps us run code. And yes, it's slow and clunky, but, and like, for example, right now I have to probably refresh in order to get this to run. So instead of running it here, what I'll do is I'll just paste it into Python Tutor. So I'm here. I pasted my code. Let's visualize the execution. So we have our array. Let's expand this. All right, we have our array. Dwight Schrute, 36. We want to access index 2. So let's move through our code here, step 2 of 2. And as you can see, this is our T diagram. Our user got saved. This array got saved here. And we can see here the index is at each value just the way I wrote it on my page. So if I step through this, now we get the console 36. The console here, this is the console up here, 36. That's because we said a user at index 2 and the value was given there 36. So that's how we printed that specific value. Okay, so let's take a poll check to see how well we understand that the arrays are ordered by their indices or their indexes, and we can access those specific indices by calling out that number next to the name of the array in the bracket. So kind of a mouthful to say, but all I'm doing is seeing the order that things are listed in here, 0, 1, 2. I'm getting user at 2, so we get the value 36. That's how we access that. All right, so when we count index values, we know we count from 0, right? 0, 1, 2. But here's something tricky I'm going to introduce now, and I want you guys to pay attention to this because it will trip you up if you don't catch it in the beginning. So let's see what I mean. I'm going to now talk about how we can count. We could count the length of this array using an inbuilt a JavaScript feature here. So we can say user dot length, user dot length. And user dot length will give us the length of the array. So who can tell me what number is going to print here? If I print this here, console log user dot length, what's the number that I'm going to get in the console? Type your answer in the chat. Your prediction. Some say 2, some say 3. And the answer is important, so let's pay attention. The number is 3. What? What's going on there? I thought we just said we're counting from 0 when we count indices. Yes, we are. We are counting 0 when we count indices. As you can see here, this is still logged 0, 1, 2. But when we use the inbuilt function dot length, we are actually counting from 1. Right? The dot length counts from 1. So when we're counting dot length, we're counting 1, 2, 3. We're starting from the left-hand side to the right. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So let's now think, how can we use this dot length? How can we use dot length to get this value here? How can we use dot length to get this value that we had gotten previously, 36? We can do it somehow. Any guesses? If you don't already know, let's take a look. Why don't they make it the same way? Is there a reason why? There's probably a good reason why. They didn't tell me though. So this is just the way that we have to learn it for now. No, there is a good reason. And well, let's play with this here a little bit. So we know that user dot length gives us a number, and it gives us an exact number of the length of the array starting from 1, 2, 3. And I said, how can we use dot length to get this value, 36? Let's show if this value is 3, right? If this value is 3, then we know user dot length minus 1 is what? Easy. What's 3 minus 1?
2.
2. So this will give us 2, right? Because user dot length is 3, minus 1 is 2. So let's see this in action. I'm just going to copy this into Visual, and not Visual Studio, but into the visualizer. Let me edit this. Okay, here we are. Now I'm just going to say user.length -1. This is just going to be the value 2, right? So I'm just taking the length, subtracting 1. Let's see this executed. Step to the very last step, and it's 2 now, right? All we did was get that value 3, and we subtracted 1 from it. So now using this here, user.length -1, we're getting the value 2. We're getting the value 2. Now, what would happen if we were to increase the size of our array, sorry. So let's give Dwight a middle name. Anyone know a good middle name for Dwight? What about Howard? That sounds like appropriate. Dwight Howard Schrute. All right. And so now our array is a little bit bigger. Our array is a little bit bigger. So what do we expect this user.length -1 to give us as a value back if we take this code and paste it in? What's the value now that I should see? 3, right? Yeah, all I did was increase it by 1. So we should see 3 again. All right. And so now we have 3 printed. And we also see in our array here, there's 0, 1, 2, 3. So user.length -1 is going to get the length of the array counting from 1. And if you subtract 1, then you can always get that last index. You see how 3 is the very last index here at 36. So what I'm going to do now is I want to use user.length -1. This is always going to grab the very last index of the array. And I'm going to say, because I know this is going to give me a number value, I'm going to say, give me from the user array, use this value. We're just going to, instead of putting a direct number in here, instead of saying, I want index 3, instead of saying like this, I'm going to not put this 3 in here, but I'm just going to take this and stick it in there. This represents a number value anyway, so we can use this to access an index from our array. So now we're saying user at user.length -1. Let's see how this would work. All right, so user at user.length -1, and user.length should be 1, 2, 3, 4. -1 is 3. So we are saying user at index 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3. That is index 3 counting from 0. Let's visualize the execution and see if we can get that value. And there we go. We got it. 36. We're able to get 36 from getting the user.length -1. And that's going to give us the value at the very end of the array. Okay, so let's take a pulse check now. I need to know how well you guys are understanding that user.length counts the length of the array, and you can use that number to get an index value. You can use that number to get an index value. In the lecture, we're going over time here, so we're going to close out soon. So this is the last thing I'm going to introduce right now. How would we get then the second to last value? How would we get the second to last value? What is the second to last value?
You can subtract it by 2 and it's true.
Schrute, right? So if we're able to get the last value by saying -1, how can we get the second to last value?
Minus it by 2.
Yep, that's it. So if we paste it in here and we say 2, let's execute it to the very end. And now we get Schrute in our console. That's because we said user.length minus 2. User.length is 1, 2, 3, 4 minus 2. 4 minus 2 is 2. So we're saying user at index 2. So we count 0, 1, 2, shroot. Okay, so that's what we printed. Console log this, shroot. This concept of counting indexes versus counting length is just going to take some getting used to. And the way you get used to it is by playing with it the way that you saw me doing it. All right, so console log the last value, console log the second to last value. See what other things you can do with user.length. But we know that it counts from 1, which is different from the way we count indices. And if you don't catch this now, it'll confuse you later on, and we're gonna have to go over this later. So just try to get this grounded in your mind today as you work in assignments for today and tomorrow. Okay, so this is an array, and user.length minus 2 is how we get the second to last index of the array. And that's about all I need to introduce with arrays today. There's one more thing, and I'll try to make it reasonably quick without going too fast. There's a couple of inbuilt functions that you can do on an array. There's push and pop. Push and pop. We can manipulate an array using these inbuilt functions, push and pop. So let's take a look here. We have we have this user here. Let's read it. Its array is Dwight, Shroot, and then his email. And then we have user.push, Jello. Okay, so what will this do? User.push.
Jello to the end of the array.
Add to the end. Add a value to the end. So yes, let's see this now in action. I'm just going to user.push Jello, and then after I pushed it, I'm going to console log it so I see it log to my console. Let's take this code. Let's go to the visualizer. Let's move through it step by step now. Okay, so we have our array. Okay, it's read through it. Our computer acknowledges it. It saves it to its memory. Here it is. Now we're on this line. After we pass through this line, we would have executed it. So we hasn't done it yet. So what this is going to do is add the string Jello to the end of the array. So user.push Jello. Let's see what this looks like now. And we see our array was changed now because Jello wasn't there before. Maybe it wasn't so clear because the page wasn't so big. So let's go previous to that. This is our array. After push, boom, it gets added to the end. So when we console log it, we should see this array up here in this console. And there it is. Dwight, Shroot, his email, and then the word Jello. That's how you use push. That's how you use push. That's how you add to the end of an array. It adds to the end of the array, the right-hand most side. Now let's look at pop. What will pop do? I don't know if it's my computer or the page bugging out today. We have pop. Let's go to pop. I'm not talking about the music or how Midwest people say soda. Pop. I wonder how people in Texas say soda.
Soda water.
They say water?
Yeah.
Soda water? I didn't know that. Cool. All right. So we have user. Here's our array, user.pop. And so we should see this at the end. Dwight and Shroot. We want to pop, which means we pop off from the end of the array. the last value. So let's see this executed, and this will be the last thing for this lecture. Right. Here's our array, Dwight Schrute, beats bear at battlestar.com, user.pop. And we want to see this at the end. So let's delete this for now, just so that we see it executed. So here we're at this step. As soon as we pass through it, it's saved to memory. We're going to pop now. The end was just cut off. And so we're going to log it after we execute this step. Dwight and Schrute. So there we are. That's how pop works. Let's take a last pull here now to help me know how well we're understanding push and pop.
Does pop only remove the last value, or is there like a modification you could do to remove like a middle value?
There's no modification to remove a middle value, but let's look at this here. This now will be the end, I promise. This will be the end. Okay, so I'm going to copy this here. If we want to access a middle value, let's read this here. We have our array, our original array, Dwight Schrute beats bears at battlestar.com. And we're going to console log user at 0. We know that if we say the index value, we're going to access that index value. Dwight is at 0, right? So user at 0, we're going to get that value Dwight. So we know this is going to be our output. Everyone pretty clear on how this works so far, right? We've done this already. Now, the new thing we're going to do here, on line 15, we're saying user at index 1, I want you to now equal Martin instead. This is updating the array at this specific index value. We can do this now. We can say, find the value in this array and change it to this. Remember how we use one equal sign to assign a value inside a variable? Now we can use an equal sign to assign a new value in a variable's index. Right, so this is still a variable user. So we're taking user at index 1, this value at index 1, and we're going to make it equal Martin. So if we console log this at the very end, this is what we should see. Dwight Martin at beats bear. So there's no value to say, get me the exact middle piece. There's no JavaScript inbuilt function to say, give me the one in the very middle, but we can use math to do that, right? We can use math to determine where the middle of the array is using array.length. If array.length, we don't know, let's say we don't know what the middle, how long the array is. We're given an array, could be thousands of values, millions. We didn't count it out, but they just gave it to us. They want us to find the middle value. So how can we do that? Let's think about that as we see this execute. And I'm just going to execute this here just to show you how you can update a specific index value. And in a minute, we're going to try to see how we can access the very middle value without knowing how long the array is. All right, so we have our user and we have our array. User, we want to console log user at 0. So we get Dwight. That's what we have when we start our array. Now we're saying user at index 1. User at index 1, Schrute. I want you to equal Martin now. That's what it's saying. I want you to equal Martin now. Okay. So after this line here, we should see Martin be updated in the memory. And there it is. It got updated there. And so when we console log this array user, we see Dwight, Martin, and then beats bears at Battlestar. So that means that value that was there previously just got lost. Schrute is now deleted. Martin has replaced it. We don't know where Schrute went, but that value just got replaced.
Say you were given like this array, and is there a way to say you like, hey, you don't need the first name anymore? Is there a way to just delete Dwight, but then like keep Martin and the email?
The splice.
I mean, sure. So I mean, like you would get rid of the, the first item in the array, but keep the second and third. So then Shroot would be your first, and
Yes.
email would be second.
Yes, there is a way to use more. There's another inbuilt JavaScript function. Someone said it's splice, and that's a specific way to get a specific index in the array. I haven't introduced that yet, and if I keep introducing more arrays, where this lecture is going to go on for another half hour.
All right, sorry.
So no, you're good. I just wanted to give an introduction, and we'll definitely cover all that information. I'll leave you guys with this challenge instead of doing it with you guys here. All right. So this will be something as a teaser that you guys can try to find out on your own, because you'll need it later on, maybe in a couple of weeks. You don't need to know right now, but just to get you thinking about it. Using what we learned about array.length, how can we find the very middle value using array.length?
You would just put the brackets and just put 1.
Well,
Or-
yes, but that's for this specific array. What if we have an array that we don't know how long it is? Maybe this is like, it goes on and on and on, and we don't know how long it goes, but we want to get the middle value anyway.
Couldn't you do user.length divided by 2?
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you divide it by 2, so you get the length. So let's say it's 1,000. So array.length or user.length would be 1,000. And if you divide it by 2, then you get 500. 500 then is an index value that you can use to access in the array. So the length divided by 2, that gives you a number. You can use that number to get an index value. Making sense? Okay, we'll definitely have more time to practice with this later. But we're just introducing it now, so don't worry if that didn't make sense. We will have to practice the basic things before we get to that point. So let's do that today with our assignments. Let's look at our assignments. We are working with variables still, the ones that we created yesterday. We'll be creating a function later on, and we'll be going over how to create functions. That will be in tomorrow's afternoon lecture. So we'll explain what that is later, but we've gone over arrays. And so today's Algo app challenge is to go through the arrays and functions. I believe that's level 2 through 3. So get 2 through 3 done of your Algo app. You need that to get to 4 and 5 anyways. And so you also have the code challenge predict arrays. Let's look at what that looks like. Code challenge predict arrays. This font's too big. All right, so this is your code challenge. This is your assignment for the day. We've now dealt with arrays, so we should be pretty familiar with how to do this assignment. The instructions are here. I won't get too much into it, but we want to create a T diagram. The way we've been seeing Trace write its own T diagram, Python Tutor do its T diagram. We want to write our own. We can use an Excel spreadsheet to write a T diagram. We can do it by hand using Zoom tools and then screenshot that, whatever we did. We want to be able to T diagram, though, whatever we're reading. And T diagramming is an important, it's important to show your work. Remember when we had math class and you would be so good at the math question, you could just solve it by looking at it, and then your teacher would mark you down because she or he would say, okay, you didn't show your work, right? You didn't show that work. So T diagramming is showing how you got to that conclusion. It's the proof that you are able to properly understand how the computer is reading it. And it will help you anyways, even if you're pretty confident you can do it without a T diagram. No, it's there to help you keep track of variable changes. So it's really important to be able to master that skill. Okay, so we have code challenge predict arrays. And we also have, by the end of the day, we want to get on that ride. All right, that's our end of the day challenge. This afternoon, we'll be going over commenting and conditional. So I already went over commenting a little bit. So we're mostly, well, I already covered commenting. So we're just going to cover conditionals. Okay, this is going to be our topic of the afternoon, conditionals. And so that's it for this morning, guys. Pretty big lesson, right? So appreciate you guys hanging in there. And we'll create the breakout rooms. Stop the recording. Does anyone have any questions before I do that, though? On today's lesson, anything related to schedule, coding dojo? We're all good? Okay.
Oh, sorry, I have a question.
Oh, go ahead. No. Yeah.
So for get on that ride, do you want for the stretch goals, do you want 3 different JS files zipped into a folder, into a file?
Let me take a look here. No, it should just be one file, just one file. And for the stretch goals, if you want to get to the stretch goal, and you want to rewrite it completely from scratch and not override everything that you had done previously, comment out the previous code.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, cool. All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is that it for the lecture for today?
Yes, that's it for today's lecture. What we're going to do now is break out into rooms. You guys will go work on your assignments. We'll do our second attendance check to make sure that you guys are working on your assignments in one of the rooms. And then the third attendance will be the next lecture for today.
Okay, and what is the next lecture?
The next lecture is at 2 Mountain Time. You can see that on the schedule here.
Okay.
2 Mountain Time. Cool. Yeah, and we'll be going over conditionals. So yesterday we went over data types. We've gone over variables, what they are. Now we're creating variables to use. We're creating array variables, and we are going to be working with conditionals this afternoon. So this is exciting stuff. We're moving fast, and I just want to let you guys know one last thing before we close out the lecture. No, I noticed you guys have been sending me some emails. For if you have to miss class, if you have to be absent, and that's fine. Life comes up, but I just want to let you guys know this class moves so fast. Even if you miss one day, you're gonna get behind, most likely, unless you're like really ahead already. But if you miss a day or two, we're covering so much information that if you come back, it's like missing a couple episodes of your favorite show. You're going to be like, what? This happened? I don't know what's going on. So try not to miss. We have the lectures recorded for that reason in case you do. But just as a warning, as a student myself, that sometimes I miss class. When I came back, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on. So that's just I just wanted to say that there, and that's it, everyone. So let's close out this recording. It's gone on long enough.